the topic of the day, how to help corporate yes girls make a leap. Yes, this is for all you females out there, and men too. This applies to, but we're going to speak a little extra to the girls out there. And I'm very passionate about this because it is a topic that I struggled with, and it is something that I continually grow with. And these are two women that also went through it. And I think it will resonate with a lot of women out there and men. And I can't wait for you all to meet Christy, Metcalf, and Jess Sato. And I am going to bring them on right now. Welcome, Christy. Welcome, Jess.
Hey there.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
So excited to have you too. Did I say your last name correctly, Jess? Sato?
It's Sato. Actually.
Sato.
Yeah,
okay.
It's all good though. It happens all the time.
Thank you. No, this is awesome. Thank you for joining me, ladies. I've been very excited to talk to you two in depth about this. And even as Christy and I were kind of prepping earlier, we got into a whole deep conversation around it. But before we get into that, Christy, why don't you kind of share with us your journey? How did you go from corporate to starting your own company? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so I think mine was probably like many of the viewers out there and all three of us sitting here on this call today, that I followed the plan, right? And the plan was I was supposed to go to college, and then I was supposed to land this amazing corporate job, and I was supposed to start climbing the ladder and get married and have 2 children and buy the house and do everything that I was supposed to do. And I did it, and I did it very well. I followed the rules. And then about 11 years into my career, I had landed my dream job. I was traveling a lot. I had no life balance whatsoever. I was leaving on Sunday, coming back on Friday, newly married, wasn't seeing my husband much. And I really looked out ahead of me and thought, what am I going to do? And I didn't see a path that looked like what I wanted to do. And so I had this moment in Kansas where I was standing before a group of 35 leaders, and I asked them in part of their introduction to give me what their hobby or their passion was. And as 36 people introduced themselves, it became quite apparent in my mind that I had nothing outside of work. And I went back the following week and I had a conversation with my manager about, can I cut back on the travel? Can we change some things? And those words that he said to me will forever just ring in my head, because it was the tipping point for me. He said, Christy, there is no, which meaning this is what you signed on to, right? And you have agreed to this, and we need you to do it. And so I came home and thought, I have to design what no and yes looks like on my terms. And I decided 6 months later, I did a lot of processing and prepping, but 6 months later, I launched my first business. And I have to tell you, when I told my friends and family, they told me it was career suicide. They couldn't believe it. I was giving up security and, everything that I had worked toward, and I had reached this level of success. And my question to them was, or their question to me was, what if it fails? And I said, well, if it fails, I'll just go get another job. And it was just that simple in my mind that I would do that. And it's been 20 years. So obviously it was very successful, but it was scary. And I don't know that I ever took being an entrepreneur seriously. We'll talk about that in part of our journey. And, it was one of those things that I just wanted an opportunity to say no on my terms, yes to the things that I really wanted to do, and to have some balance and flexibility in my life. And in my mind, the only way that I could achieve that was starting my own business.
Thank you. And Jess, what about you? How did you go from corporate to starting your own business? What was that journey like?
It's funny, Christy and I laugh about this, but our stories are basically identical. Change out a couple details here and there. And like her, I followed the plan, went to college, landed the corporate job, climbed the ladder. Everything was really good until it wasn't. And I actually had a family when I left corporate. I had 2 young kids, and my husband was traveling all the time. I was teaching corporate leadership development classes. And there really was no bandwidth. Every detail of our days or weeks were perfectly planned, and any change or deviation to the plan was disastrous. And the tipping point for me came when my husband was out of the country and I was scheduled to teach a class, and both of my kids came down with a fever. We didn't have any family. And I literally left my 8-year-old, I kind of like cringe at the thought that I'm even saying this out loud. I'm not a negligent mother. I left my 8-year-old son home with a burner phone that I bought the night before because there was no place for him to go. And I was the only one who could teach this class. And that moment really sealed the deal for me. I realized I just needed more flexibility. So for Christy, it was the freedom to say no. For me, it was needing more time flexibility and time freedom. And, you know, I, like Christy, really didn't take entrepreneurship seriously. Like when I left corporate, I pursued a couple of other different passions, like cookies and cupcakes, which I'm very good at, but I don't love doing, you know, long term. But I, you know, was asked to come back as a contractor, and that was my foray really into entrepreneurship. And there was no plan. There was no, you know, well thought out business strategy. It was like, I need a legal entity to do this work. And that's how my first real business began. And now I look back and I think I'm actually surprised at how successful I was in spite of the lack of planning. But I can say for sure that now, you know, and Christy's going to tell a little bit about Two Smart Girls when we get into it. But I realized, like, when you are very intentional about your decisions, I mean, it was an intentional decision to leave, but when you're intentional about your next steps and going with a plan, everything works much better. So for me, it was really needing more flexibility and not wanting to be forced into a situation where I had no options.
And it's almost like building something that would work for us in all the different aspects of us, right? Motherhood, work, family, all the little parts and moving pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
So for all of you out there, definitely connect with Christy and Jess. You will find them on LinkedIn, and you can probably hear my dog. I even like locked him into a room, but I think he sees a squirrel. So it's live. The show is for sure live. And just want to acknowledge some of the people that have hopped on. Mark Reynolds, thank you for joining us. Brian Faulkner, welcome, Brian. Mike Rochelle, Sarah Waskow, thank you. Thank you for joining us for sure. But I want to dive into, because sometimes I think it almost takes a catalyst, right? Maybe this moment or moment in time that kind of like flips us over. And Jess, like you guys had this light bulb moment, right? You have what you call the $54,000 phone call, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so, you know, Christy and I have known each other for a lot of years. We worked with each other in various capacities, but we had never, you know, worked together for long periods of time. And in 2017, we found ourselves working in Ethiopia, Africa, and we were doing leadership training. And we had been in country off and on over the course of about 6 months, at least 3 or 4 different times by this point. And we were there together for 20 plus days at a time. And we were nearing the very end of our work. And we had pushed all of our other clients out. So we had basically dedicated about 6 months of our time to this work. And right before we were supposed to get on an airplane, like less than 24 hours, we got an email saying this trip has canceled. And for the first time in our careers, I can say we had a gaping 3-week hole in the calendar. And we were both spiraling with, what do we do? And asking ourselves, is this the end of the contract? I mean, there was just so much gray around what was happening. There wasn't a lot of information. We went back and forth a couple of times on whether or not it was really canceled. And after it was officially canceled, we just kept spiraling. And at one point, her husband and my husband, and we live in different places. Christy's in Texas, I'm in Colorado. Our husbands were like, are you going to get paid for this work? Right? Because as business owners, right, we and consultants, we rely on the revenue that is projected and all of that.
Right.
And we were like, oh, well, you know, we didn't do the work. So no, of course not. And they just kind of looked at us like, what is wrong with you? And
yeah.
he, you know, my husband was like, you know, don't you have a contract? Isn't there a cancellation clause? And I look back on that moment, I'm like, oh, duh. Like, why didn't we even think about it? But, you know, back to Christy's point before, like, we really didn't take entrepreneurship seriously, you know, not in the way that we do now. And sure enough, we checked our contract and we were supposed to be given 2 weeks notice. And the work for this 2.5, 3 week period that we were going to be there was for $54,000. So you can imagine,
yes,
you know, if you're looking at our revenue projections and all of that, like this is a huge hit. And, you know, another week went by where we were back and forth every day. What should we do? And finally, we just realized that men, we love you men, but you're not asking yourselves these questions. You're literally just sending the invoice and that's the end of it. And that is, we found ourselves in a spiral of questioning our, you know, should we do it? I mean, there are other factors like this was a US aid contract for a developing country. So there's just a lot of factors that were at play. But finally, we realized we really needed to make this phone call. We needed to hold them accountable for the contract. So we get on the phone. Christy tends to be the more assertive of the two of us. She's very direct, as you'll learn. And you know, she was talking, making the case, and I just knew that what she was saying was not landing. Like they were not hearing what they needed to hear. And I do not tend to be very confrontational, but there was something inside me that just welled up, and I realized we have to be more firm here. And I said, you know, this is not personal. This is business. And the guy said, so you're telling me that you think you should get paid for work you did not do? And it was like this pause where almost like out of body, where you're looking down on yourself and you're like, you have two paths. One path will keep you acquiescing your whole life. And the other path is you're going to get paid. And I said, yeah, I do think you should pay us because that's what's in our contract. He goes, okay, I just needed to hear you ask for it. And that statement.
That still gives me goosebumps. And I've heard the story already. And
right? I mean, it's like, I get chills even saying it out loud because it was such a profound moment. And, you know, for both of us, it really was the first time that we had truly asked for what we knew we deserved. And now I look back and I think, well, that was just so obvious. But in the moment, it wasn't. And it really was the catalyst for us to do some self-examination and to think about how many other women are out there doing this. How many are questioning their worth, you know, deciding like, no, I'm not going to ask for what's in the contract, or I'm going to, you know, have them pay me half, or, you know, fill in the gaps here. But this is
guilt too.
Yeah.
For some reason. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, Two Smart Girls really was formed with this deep belief that you have to ask for it, and that our heart's desire really is to see women stepping into this place of confidence and a deep knowing that what they are trying to achieve is worth it and that they can do it on their terms.
Oh, I love that. So Christy, of all the names that you could have chosen, why, or for both of you, like, why Two Smart Girls? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's kind of a controversial name, actually. We never thought about it in the moment. So, you know, after we finished this Ethiopia experience, we kind of call it our Jerry Maguire moment, right? Where he has this epiphany and this awakening, and he grabs the goldfish and he says, "Who's going with us? Who's going with me?" And it really was that sort of moment. We knew that we wanted to do something together, but we weren't sure quite what that looked like. Was it a project? Was it working with a client? And So we came back and sort of decompressed from Ethiopia, and then we met in Arizona on neutral turf and talked about, what was this? And leading up to that meeting, I had gone to a conference, and the speaker was talking about what would we do if we knew we couldn't fail? And I really hate that question in a way because it makes you think about it. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And at the time, I had reached a place where I was a little burned out of working with corporations. Vandy, you and I talked about that before the call. And, I was sort of like, what do I want to do with my life? Even though I had this very successful, almost 2 decades of business ownership, what do I want to do? I felt like I was being pulled in a different direction and called in a different direction. And so I left that evening, and there was a vocalist at the conference that night, and she had this amazing voice. My kids would tell you, I've always dreamed of being a singer, although I'm not one. And I got into the car and I was just driving, and I was like, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? And I just said, I would have this amazing voice. Like, that would be it. That's exactly what I thought of. And I heard this little whisper say, I gave you one. Why aren't you using it? And I was like, I was sort of thinking in a vocalist capacity and not really anything else, but it really made me stop and think. And I was like, we've had this amazing experience, and we've talked to groups around the world, and, constantly people would come up to us and say, how did you start your business? It's so amazing that you've done this. And I think that I can speak for both of us, that we looked at all that success and we sort of thought it was just by luck. We were in the right place at the right time, knew the right people, but it was never really anything that we did. And looking back on it, that's terrible because it was everything that we did. And so over the course of the next several days, I really just had these visions of 2 smart girls and what that was going to stand for. And we were going to help women. And it was more, we talk a lot about becoming the CEO of your life, whether that's in business, owning a business, or whether that's still being in corporate America. But it is about taking control and taking charge. And so we met in Arizona and we talked about what that looked like. And I think we went to bed the first night, not really knowing what it looked like. Because at the end of the day, we talked about, yes, this is so exciting, we want to do it. But the next morning, we woke up and I said, we haven't really defined, is this a business? Is this a project? And, when we
hobby.
A hobby,
Yeah,
right? A hobby. And when we sat down and talked about it, we realized that neither of us really had owned being an entrepreneur, even though we had had tremendous success. And both of our husbands had always wanted to start a business, and we were sort of fulfilling their dream and their wish. And while we entered into it with this sense of balance and family, and that was our purpose at the time, we felt like our purpose was much bigger now. And it was really to help women get out of their head and own, right, their worth, their amazingness, asking for what they want. And we truly felt because of that moment that we had the skills. It was like our whole career had brought us to this moment of where we knew we were the right people. So we went with 2 smart girls. Many women have a problem with that. They think we should be 2 smart women. But the girls really resonate. And we'll get into it a little bit later. But, the limiting beliefs and the stories that we tell ourselves really are deeply rooted from when we were a girl, right? That lives with us. And now at 40 years old, we're helping women sort of dissect those stories that they've told themselves their entire lives and create and rewrite those stories.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Kelly Flowers in the audience. What a great, relatable story. And sometimes it's because we see ourselves in each other, and we've gone through that same struggle, all those turmoil and all that turmoil in our heads. And Michelle was saying so many people, women, apologizing and not asking for their worth. And love that we're creating this space. Yes, indeed. Brian, one of my former guests, with regard to the phone caller, you just have to ask for it. Yes, Brian, it comes naturally to you, but we run through so many thoughts in our head before we actually go for it. Yeah. But like Jess, you could have just as easily served, everyone. That would certainly broaden your reach. There's tons of people, whether it's male or female, that want to go from corporate to entrepreneurship. but you chose to go down this deeper path in this niche of serving women. Why is that?
Well, it's funny that you asked that because both Christy and I have worked almost exclusively with men. Our careers, I was in aerospace.
We're not going to name any companies.
No,
There's a aerospace and defense company on your profile. So.
Yes,
Just saying.
I had worked exclusively with aerospace. Christy had worked almost exclusively in chemicals and chemicals. And in many ways, I find working with men in some cases is actually easier. But our heart really is about women. And I think that's because we know that so many women have these same struggles, right? So many. I mean, we've literally been all over the world talking to women, teaching women, and the stories are all the same. It doesn't matter where you live, how you grew up. We all have this same baggage. Some of us are a little further ahead than others. Some of us have done more work. But at the end of the day, we're all still struggling with some of these same limiting beliefs, questioning our worth, asking if we can really do it. And when you couple that with the fact that there is just a massive opportunity for women right now. I mean, it is, the last I checked, it was something like over 12 million women-owned businesses are in the world today, or in the US today, and they're generating, trillions of dollars in revenue. And yet, something like 80, 88, 90% of those women-owned businesses are generating less than $100,000 in revenue. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why are women who are just as capable, have unique skills that men do not have, or utilize them in different ways? Why are they not just as successful, if not more? And when you look at that, even beyond the $100,000 revenue mark, like 4% of women-owned businesses are generating $1 million or more. So, I mean, there's just massive disparities when you look at the numbers. And it all comes back to these questions of, part of it is access, part of it is structural and institutional barriers that exist, right? I mean, most women are not, I think it's like 7% of women are getting access to venture capital. So these are fundamental structural problems within, the business entrepreneurial space. But beneath the surface of that are other questions about how women are, in some cases, getting in their own way, how they create their own glass ceiling. And we talk a lot about, we want to shatter that glass ceiling as a community of women. But before we can do that for others, we also have to really be looking at ourselves and shatter the ceiling for ourselves. And that really starts with
in this head.
Right. It is. I mean, it is like literally you are it. And so, for us, working with women is almost like a heart project, because we identify with them as mothers who know what it's like to try to be successful, to do something that you're truly passionate about while running a family. And I say running because a family is also like a business. But
the juggle.
It is constantly trying to keep the balls in the air and knowing which ones are glass and which ones are plastic and all of that. But yeah, we truly love serving women, because while we could work with men, we understand women on a truly basic level because we are them.
Yes. And so much of, like you said to Christy's point earlier about so much of what we learn as girls, right? Like I started off promoting this event by sharing like my belief growing up that a good girl stays quiet, does what she's told, says thank you, please, I'm sorry, all those things, and we're rewarded, right, for being that. And it's this journey of unlearning all that, I feel like, especially to be an entrepreneur, because we're selling, we have to ask for things, we have to ask for a price or share our price and then ask for the money. And it's like this whole reshuffling, reprogramming of the brain.
Mhm.
It really is. Yeah. And if you think about the reward that we give to girls, it is all of those things, right? I mean, a girl peaks in confidence at around age 11. And then after 11, it starts diminishing. And I saw it with my own eyes. So the last 2 years, I've actually been a chaperone for a fifth grade camping trip with my kids' school. And I noticed, because I'm never in the classroom and I'm never really privy to this, that the boys would always raise their hand first. They would always volunteer to tackle something that was, a risk or something they didn't know how to do. And the girls would hold back very quietly until they were forced to do it. And I asked the teachers both years, I said, is this what you see in the classroom? Is this indicative of what you see in the classroom? And they said, yes. Around fifth grade, the risk goes out the window, right? We reward boys for being the first to jump in and tackle it. And even if they get it wrong, everyone laughs. But for a girl to do that, that's very high risk. And so they hold back and they sort of blend in, and they don't want to embarrass themselves. They don't want people to talk about them. They don't want anyone to laugh. And they really do start to hold themselves back.
Yes.
And I'll just add really quickly, to Christy's point, they wait, and even now I see this in adult women, we wait until we know the answer 100%, right? I mean, if you talk to, I can't remember the study, but it's so fascinating because it was looking at men and women and how they were, when they would apply for new jobs. And men would consistently apply when they knew or had completed about 50% of the requirements. And women were like 90% complete. And it just goes back to that conditioning and wanting to be 100% sure. And I think, if you're looking at this from an entrepreneurial perspective, right, you're never sure. I mean, it's like a constant battle of discomfort. And, so helping women recognize that you don't have to have all the answers, and that you're not going to before you take big steps and take a risk, is a lot of unlearning that has to happen.
Absolutely. And Christy, I was skimming through your website, by the way, for all of you out there, you definitely need to check out their website. It is called twosmartgirls.com. Let me just make sure you guys can see it. Definitely go to their website. And I love this tagline. We're on a mission to help corporate yes girls confidently leap from their 9-to-5 and build wildly successful businesses. And even as you have all these great resources and things like that, but I came across something that talked about the questions that kill your dream and other limiting beliefs.
Oh,
Christy, tell me what are these questions? I have a feeling they've come across my head many times, but tell me, what are these questions that float around that kill our dreams?
I want to say this is only 20 of them. There's thousands of them that we say to ourselves to hold ourselves back. But, the 20 questions that we usually see that hold women back, and I will say, I'll preface this by starting with a limiting belief, and that is we're not enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not skinny enough. I don't have enough degrees. I'm too young. I'm too old. Whatever it is, it's not enough. And I think society does quite a job on that, in that we look at photos and I'm supposed to look like this. I actually had someone say to me when we started 2.5 years ago, and when I look at what's changed over the 20 years that I've been doing business, it's technology. Right? We didn't have this 20 years ago. I didn't have to worry about social media posts. I didn't have to worry about Facebook Lives or videos. That was all very new and foreign. And I had someone say to me 2.5 years ago, well, the only way you're successful is if you're super pretty. And I actually interpreted that as, oh my gosh, I'm not pretty enough and I'm not going to be successful, because you really you interpret that so many different ways. And so when we talk about the questions, it's, should I write a book? If you want to write a book, you should write a book. Should I do a Facebook Live? Of course, if you want to do it. We ask ourselves these questions to where we almost defeat ourselves before we ever get started, right? I'm not smart enough to start a business. And I talk about this all the time. There's our comfort zone that most of us love living in. And then there's a stretch zone which is, okay, we have some of the skills, maybe not all of them, and stretch a little bit. Then we go to a panic zone. And the work that we do is try to keep you out of the panic zone, because when you panic, you shut down. But it really is, should I have a Facebook group? If you want a Facebook group. Should I go back to school? If you want to go back to school. Should I start a business? Do you want to start a business? Like it's questions that we ask ourselves, hoping, I think we ask them because we want someone else to say, I believe in you. I see something in you that is worthy of doing.
And we're asking for permission. Like
we ask
even
for
that,
permission.
the first word of all those questions you just said was should. Should
Yes.
I? Should
Yes.
I? Should I? What? Who are we asking? Should I? Were you? And I do it too. I know I do it. And it's like we're seeking permission from something or someone that is now not there. Like we used to do it with our parents, maybe, but now we're adults. Why
That's
do you
right.
think we do that? Why? I mean,
I think conditioning
come
again.
from?
Yeah, I think it's conditioning. I think it's seeking approval. I think girls just innately have this thread. And when Jess says we've been all over the world, and it doesn't matter where you were born and raised, what culture you were brought up in, what your family was like, there's this thread of, looking for someone to see it in me, looking for that thread of permission. Like, I see it in you, Fanny. You can do this. And I was having a conversation with a woman yesterday who truly, when we first started working together, her goal was to land a management position, making more money. There's one available. I'm like, are you going to apply for it? And she said, no. And I said, why not? That was your dream. And she said, I probably won't get it. I'm not sure. And it's that whole, I don't feel that I'm good enough. And the other one is, I don't feel that I'm worthy enough. So when we look at the limiting beliefs, what will people think of me if I make more money? If I'm truly successful, if I put myself out on Facebook, if I do a LinkedIn Live, what will people say about me? What will they think about me? And the other one that I see pop up a lot is, it's almost like they think that there's a pie of success out there and we have to evenly divide it. So if I take more than my fair share of success, then that doesn't leave enough for you and Jess and other people out there. And it really is, there's more than enough to go around.
The world is abundant.
It's truly abundant. There's so much to go around if you're willing to ask for it and go after it. And I just think that we get locked in to being good girls. You said it on your post, right? Like we are conditioned and rewarded to be good, to be nice, to be giving, to be nurturing, to, think about the community and other families and take them dinners when they're having a baby. Like that's our job. That's what we see as our job. And then we have this disconnect inside of where we dream of being these powerful women and empowering other women and success and living life on our terms. And that really comes and creates an incongruent within us.
And I think also, and actually I'm not going to speak for everyone. I'm going to speak for myself here. I think sometimes I then think I can't be both. I can't be strong and powerful and then nice and giving and pleasing at the same time. Yeah. And I think that's the core of the problem, that I can be both. We can be both, and then have boundaries, right?
Yes.
As long as the boundaries are there.
Oh, and women are terrible with boundaries.
Yeah.
They're terrible with boundaries because they get locked into that. I have to, I should, I need to. And, you should never say yes at the expense of yourself. And so we become this person that everyone loves, but inside we're dying and we're spiraling and we're miserable. And then we don't know how to get ourselves out of it.
Absolutely. In the comments, we have Jennifer Beats. Jennifer, for those of you out there, and you guys should connect too. Jennifer Beats was my guest last week, and she talked about shattering our limiting beliefs. So we're just continuing on with that theme as well. We should stop shoulding ourselves.
Amen, sister. Amen.
And then she also added, we really need to get out of our heads and into our hearts. Yes. And Mike, always a great supporter. Every person that has ever been born is unique. They all have strengths and weaknesses, capabilities, and learned skills Thanks for focusing on your calling. Thank you. Yes, indeed. And Patricia, this is terrific. Seeing other women be brave encourages me to be the same. It's contagious. Yes, yes. Let's talk about that real quick before we go on. It is contagious. I think seeing other people, other women especially, do that and take that big step or big leap, then makes me think, oh, well, then maybe I can do it too, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
do you feel that, Jess, as well?
I do. I think it can go both ways. I
Mm,
definitely think you see a lot of women being pulled into that very contagious energy.
yeah.
And by paving the way, right, by showing the way, other women see themselves in that. Now, maybe they don't feel as confident, maybe they're still growing, but you've painted a picture of what's possible, of what it could look like, and you just keep moving further down the path. I've also seen though where it can be really diminishing, and I think that's where it's really important to be, surrounded by people who really support you and also challenge you. And that could happen at a personal level. We talk about it like having your own personal board of directors where
Mm,
you have those people who are your wise counsel, right? I mean, if you think about this from a
that.
business perspective, a lot of companies have a board of directors. And what does the board of
Yes.
directors do? Provides counsel, helps
Mm,
you make good decisions. And we as individuals need that too, especially solopreneurs who are making the leap from corporate into entrepreneurship, right? That is a very lonely transition sometimes. And so when you have people on your, on your squad, basically, like in your tribe,
yeah.
who are really challenging you, who are, playing the role of the wise elder, who are the cheerleader, who's the devil's
Mm,
advocate, right? Really playing that contrarian role. I even add in people who don't look like you, who are not from where you're from, who can provide alternative perspective. Um, I think all of that is really critical so that we can really be moving the needle forward, as a community. Right? Christy mentioned, and I think both of you actually have now this idea of abundance, and there really is a lack of abundance, and part of that is rooted in competition and how a lot of times positions have been limited, especially for women. It's obviously getting better, but there's still a lot of room to grow, and in places where we're moving into this very cutthroat behavior, and that transfers over into entrepreneurship as if these are behaviors that are acceptable, when in reality we can literally be doing very similar work but serve very different populations and be rising together, right? A rising tide lifts all boats, and that's something we say a lot. And I think that's true here from an entrepreneurship perspective, and really helping be on each other's tribes and supporting people as they're moving forward.
Absolutely. I see it even in content creation, right? I'm in a field, especially on LinkedIn, where there's a lot of other content creators on LinkedIn,
Mm,
all giving advice. And one way I like to look at it is that we're all going to resonate with different people. Like all three of us can say the exact
mhm,
same thing, but some people will gravitate more to Christy, some people will
mhm.
gravitate more to Jess, and some people will gravitate more to me.
Yeah,
And that's okay.
absolutely.
Like like you said, like it's abundant, and each will attract their own tribe, even if we're saying similar things.
Absolutely.
That's what I've learned along the content creation journey anyways.
Yeah. And Christy and I have been, like many people, spend a lot of time connecting and networking with others. And I routinely see people say, oh, so and so does exactly what you do. And I'm like, well, actually, no, she doesn't.
Mm-mm.
We
Mm-mm.
might, in theory, do similar work, but how we show up, who we serve, all of those things sets us apart, right? So there's really no competition here, right? You are your own barrier in this case.
Absolutely. Brian in the comments says, I can't imagine how many exceptional people have sold themselves short by thinking they're not worthy. The
Mhm.
world
Yes.
deserves your gifts. Christy, what would you say to people what would be like a piece of advice for us that sell ourselves short based on your experiences?
Well, I think especially for people who have lived in the corporate world and followed the plan like we did, I think many times we're told what our value is and we don't question it.
Just based on our salary,
Just
right?
based on our salary, right?
Yeah.
And we equate a financial dollar amount to what we're worth. And we never really dig beyond that. And most of our work really does lie in helping women understand the whole value. We actually do an exercise called the treasure chest, and it's allowing them to go back through all of their work experiences, all the way back to sometimes high school and college, and look at that collective of what they have achieved and accomplished and done. And it's amazing because they have forgotten about so much of it. Our memory is only as long as our last job or our last assignment, and they come back to us and they're like a different person. They light up and they're like, I'm amazing. and that's what we want them to say, right? And then we start dissecting and jumping into what does that translate to a client? How much is that worth? Because we've never been taught that. So many of us, I mean, Jess has talked about it before in the work that she's done. We never were told to negotiate our very first salary right out of college. And yet over a lifetime from that first negotiation, it will cost a woman about $1 million. And when you think about a woman outlives a man about 7 years, that's really important financial means. And I always go back to when we talk about how they sell themselves short. You are the only one out of this planet with 7.5 billion people with your fingerprint, with your thumbprint. And that alone, if you just really stop and think about it and get connected to that, you are the only one like you. And the world needs what you have to offer.
Well said. Jess, on your website, you guys have this, I guess it's a template or a workbook, something called 7 Steps to Make a Major Career Change. And I know a lot of people in the audience tuned in today thinking about that, right? It's always sometimes this just little voice in our head, right? Is it time? Is it time for a change? Is it time to move from corporate to entrepreneurship, or even just to make a leap, right? What are those 7 steps?
So, I love this question because immediately people go to what are the step-by-step tactical things, right? I mean, I would just love to see in the comments, how many of you, when Fanny said 7 steps to make a major career change, thought, okay, what are the tactical things? What are the step-by-step things, right? I'd just love to see that in the comments.
Who thought that?
Right, yeah, I mean,
say yes in the comments.
That's, when we're making a major career change, the first question that people have is how? How do I do it? But what we have found is that none of those mechanics, I'm just going to call them the mechanics of making a career change, matter unless you have a couple of things in place. Perhaps the most important thing is belief. And when I say belief, I mean this deep knowing that you have something to offer the world, that you have the ability, even if you don't fully know what it will look like, how it will feel and show up in the world, but you have this belief that you can do it and that it's needed, right? Until you believe that about yourself, you're never going to make the leap or make a leap, right? From corporate to entrepreneurship or, from, one job to the next. If you don't believe fundamentally that you have what it takes to make that happen, you're never going to do that. Some other things that I've seen consistently is, needing to do this on your terms, right? A lot of times we're, going back to the shoulds, needing to ask permission. And until you're at this place where you recognize that when you're making a leap, when you're making a career change, it has to be on your terms, right? Christy left because she wanted it on her terms. I left because I needed things to be on my terms. Building 2 smart girls on our terms, right? So until you believe that, it's going to be very difficult to put any of those mechanics in place. One of the things that I think is interesting is just acknowledging that self-doubt is part of this process, right? So on one hand, I'm saying you have to believe. And on the other hand, you have to recognize that there will definitely be moments where you're like, wow, what am I doing? I am way over my head, completely out of my depth. And that is completely normal. In fact, I would be worried about you if you never had self-doubt, right? The most confident people in the world are questioning whether or not they have what it takes, but always come back to that place of deep knowing that they have what it takes, even if they have to seek counsel. And that kind of brings me to the next piece, which is, a willingness to invest in yourself. So one of the things I found to be very interesting is that when you're in corporate, professional development is everything. We're constantly going to workshops and certification programs and corporate training sessions. I mean, Christy and I did that for years. Thank you for companies who pay for their employees to do these things, right? But when you make that leap, sometimes you have to make the investment in yourself. That means dollars out of your own pocket. Sometimes when you are an entrepreneur, many times as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to invest financially and with your time in yourself. So, until you have some of these pieces, and that's not all of them, right? I mean, you're welcome to grab the guide on our website. Courage, not knowing all of the pieces and how they're all going to fit together, but just believing that you can do it. One of the things I always say, and I actually think there's a book called this, but the answer to how is yes. The answer to how is yes.
Oh,
And really that is rooted in this deep belief.
let's say it
that
one more time.
The answer to how is yes. Yes, I'm willing to figure it out. Yes, I'm willing to invest in myself. Yes, I have what it takes. Yes, I can do this. Yes, 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 yes. You never hear me say, I don't know how to do a LinkedIn Live. I don't know how, right? But I have a willingness to figure it out, a willingness to step into courage, to be uncomfortable. I'm so committed to this idea that I'm willing to do what it takes to figure it out, right? The answer is yes, right? And that all stems from this deep knowing, this deep belief. And so, we talk a lot in our Smart Girl community about the mechanics, but we spend 80% more time talking about the mindset and the beliefs, because those are the pieces that truly are the game changer.
So true. Yes. And they're all waiting for the 7 steps. Patricia said, yes, had pen and paper out. So you can't keep them in any more suspense, Jess. Tell us. Give us the highlights of the 7.
Okay, let me think here. Part of it, so we run a workshop that is a true delight called Making the Leap. And in there, we spend the first 5 days really talking about what does the dream look like? So, really thinking about what is it that you want to create in the world, and how do you want that to fit with, your life, right? Because especially if you're leaving corporate to be an entrepreneur, you're doing that because you want freedom of some sort, right? So what is the dream of what your life can be? What is the vision for your business? We dig into things like, who do you want to serve? What is it that you want to sell? I mean, what is it that you want to create and put out in the world? What service can you provide? And then we dig into a really deep examination of the numbers. Like one of the things that I hear women say a lot is, I could never leave my corporate job because of the money. And Christy and I have obviously both given up corporate salaries.
Yeah.
But we did that with a plan. And I'm a huge believer. I'm a planner by nature. When I made the leap, I had planned for an entire year. We paid down a ton of debt. We, lived below our means in order to make that happen. So really getting clear on what your numbers are and what you actually need to, to survive, what you want to make or what you need to make in order to replace your salary or to be at a place where you can comfortably make that leap. And one of the other things that we talk a lot about from the perspective of making a career change is really what are the kinds of conversations that you need to have. And we refer to this as the hard, meaning when you leave, right? If you are, I'll just use myself as an example. My husband and I had a very rigid routine because we were both working corporate jobs. I would drop the kids in the morning. He would pick the kids at night. We would tag team on dinner. Some days it was on him. Some days it was on me. Laundry was on me. He was doing the dishes, right? I mean, we had negotiated roles. We lovingly refer to this as the dance, right? But every family has a dance in their home, a way in which we move with each other, the schedule, the rhythm. But when one of you leaves to make a change, the dance changes. Okay.
And
And
the dynamics, the
everything.
balance.
And so you have to have had some conversations, because otherwise you're going to come in and, there is this automatic assumption that, oh, you're not working, right? You're home all day. You have time to grocery shop, to do the dishes, to do the laundry, to clean the house, when in reality, you are working. So you have to have some of these hard conversations about what are the roles and responsibilities going to look like? How will things shift when you are making this leap? And what do you let go of, right? What do you gain, right? All of that is part of this process.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to spew some of this out for them because they're on pins and needles. So what do you have to let go of, right?
Yeah. What do you let go of? And when I say that, I mean, when you leave corporate, or even leave a job within corporate to pursue a different job, things shift. Your relationship shift, your network shifts, the way you spend your time shifts. You see a lot of shifting happening. And some of that is an actual loss. I mean, I remember thinking, oh, these people who I spend all my time with, 40 plus hours a week, we travel together around the world. I just assumed that they would still be my BFFs. But the reality is, when I shifted out into a different role, now all of a sudden I was on the outside. I was no longer on the inside, right? So yeah, we could go out and I could understand what they were saying, but they were completely consumed with their world. It's not that they weren't interested in mine, but there was a shift in that relationship. And so, part of making a career change is just being really clear on what you want from a business perspective, but then also recognizing that you are going to have some significant shifts. And you're going to have to come face to face with how all these things that you never thought would come up will come up. Mindset blocks. Like, I don't think in corporate, I knew that I had, there were areas where I wasn't confident, but I just felt like a rock star because I was climbing the ladder. I was doing what I was saying. I was being rewarded. But now, all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's all on me. I don't have this big corporate name, this, business card.
Who am I?
Who am I?
Just me, right? Yeah, it's a great, who am I, right? So the question about your finances, the question about your relationships, the question about what you gain, what you let go of, all of that really gets rooted back into this question of, do I really believe that I can do it, that I have something to offer, that I'm worthy of doing this, right? So, we start with belief and we really end with belief, because it is very much rooted in how you will see your success grow or not.
Oh, the belief part is so big. Like, I can't even describe how big the belief part is, because I think it's so true, because we've learned processes and systems and procedures and templates and ways of doing things, but if our head's not quite set right around our belief that we can do it, then all those other things fall apart. And it starts with belief.
Yeah, it does. And I can tell you, every client that we work with, once we give them all the parts, the pieces, the nuts, the bolts, right? And they're left with, okay, I've got the website, I've got the business card, I've got the logo, I know what my offer is, I know who my client is, I want to serve. And then you just have to put yourself out there. And that's really where the hard comes in. And, when we see the struggle, we see the client really struggling. Why would they pick me and not just Google the information, right? Why would they choose me over somebody else? Why would they buy my service versus someone else's service? It all is deeply rooted in belief. And that is where like the business stalls and derails. And I will say, even in corporate, right? When you're still in a corporate position, believing that you deserve more, that you want more, believing that you can set boundaries and you can have the life that you want no matter where you are, believing that that's possible is something that many of us struggle with.
And believing that when we ask, people will say yes.
Yes, and they will.
They really will.
They really will. We get asked all the time, like, how I'm constantly asked to attend things or to do things. How do you get out of it? It's very simple. Oh, I'm so sorry. I have another commitment. And they're like, well, what if they ask you what the commitment is? I said, they won't. They just won't. Yeah. And the commitment could be doing yoga in my living room at 1:00 in the afternoon. I just have another commitment. And it's amazing that when they say it and they don't get pushback, they're like, I can't believe that worked. That was way too simple. How did it work? We're so afraid to just stand in what we want and what we want our life to look like and what we truly believe is best for us, that we put our needs second and put everyone else's first.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is The Alchemist. Right?
Yes.
Have you read The Alchemist?
Yes.
And it talks about how when we pursue our heart's desire, the universe rises to meet us.
Yep.
And I believe that now.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it in my head, but I don't think it kind of seeped into my heart until I hit entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I believed in myself and just asked and put it out there, it would always come back. And every time I got into my head, then that's when nothing moved.
That's right.
Right. Totally.
Exactly it.
Yeah. Man. We have a question from Olivia. Hey, Olivia. Shout out to her. She's a recruiter out there. She says, sometimes it's challenging to stick up for my ideas at work. And then she also, actually, that wasn't the question. The question she had was, what are the signs to look for? When is it time to make a move? Either of you who would like to take that?
You want to go, Christy?
I can. Yeah. So for me personally, I describe it like this, the rumble inside, the discomfort that you feel. And I think that we've all been there, and we try to silence it, and we try to ignore it, and we think, oh, it's not really there, but it keeps getting louder and louder and louder until you can't ignore it. And the way I describe it is I tell people, take notice of that, because that is the universe, for a better word, telling you that something is out of alignment, and be receptive and open to whatever is coming your way. But I find that people try to suppress it. I should be happy here. I have a great job. I should be happy with, there are so many people out there that have less than me, that are less fortunate, that don't make the money that I make.
It's that dirty S word again.
Yes, good. And I say, when you're no longer excited about the work that you're doing, when you're not excited to roll out of bed every morning and to go in and tackle it, then you really need to look at what that's telling you, because life is meant to be enjoyed. It is possible. Jess and I say we are very blessed that we do the work that we do. We love the work that we do. And, someone very wise told me years ago, do the work that you would do no matter if you got paid or not, but that you're so good at it that people pay you to do it. And I live by that. Every time a corporate client was sucking life out of me and the energy out of me, I just sat with that and thought, this is not where I'm supposed to be. It's time for me to move on. And so it really is about taking ownership of the work that you do, of where you are. There is another job, career, position, business out there for you. And that's just signs that you need to explore that.
But like Jess, the unknown's scary, right? What do you say to folks that tell you that? The unknown's scary. Like, there's comfort in structure. There's comfort in being comfortable, right?
Oh yeah.
What do you say
I
to the fear?
I always say, I'm going to chime in really quick. I say, choose your hard.
Yeah.
Oh,
You want the hard of being dissatisfied, uninspired, unfulfilled, or do you want the hard of learning and doing something new that could be everything you've ever wanted?
That's right. She took the words right out of my mouth. We're like one brain. So
yeah.
yeah, but I completely agree. You know, I've been in situations where, you know, when I first was at this breaking point, it was scary. The thought of giving up, you know, what I consider to be a huge part of my identity, right? Because that's what happens, right? We are in these corporate jobs, we've stepped into these roles and we basically make this who we are.
We think
And
we're our job titles.
yeah,
We are.
yeah, absolutely.
We are.
And there is this period where, you know, you're like, I would rather be uncomfortable and miserable than make the leap. But at some point, the rumble, as Christy said, becomes too loud. The pain becomes too great, the misery. And it's at that point that the unknown of what's out there is better than what you're in right now. And, you know, like I said, you don't have to have all the answers. You have to have an idea of what you might want to do. You have to believe that in some way, shape, or form, there's something that's possible for you. And, you know, the answer to how is yes. So you just will figure it out.
Yeah. And I know my rumble lived in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
So like it would be in knots whenever I did things that were sucking my soul. And I would still be doing it. But that knot would be there in my stomach. And yeah, at some point it's like, I can't live with that knot anymore.
Well, and I think that it's almost an out-of-body experience. When you finally get to the point, it's like you're looking outside of yourself. You're looking at yourself thinking, how did I get here? How did I get here? I followed the plan. I did what I was supposed to do. I never questioned it. And is this all there's going to be for the next 20, 25, 30 years? Yeah. And when the answer is no, then it's time to do something.
But you guys have built a community, right? To counter that. And I think that's the answer, is community. And why is it so important, you think, Christy, for us to collaborate and build communities and support each other? Because you guys have done that.
We have, yes. I think it's important because just by nature, women are very collaborative, nurturing, relational. They love that. And, you know, it's very scary. So I talk about when I left corporate, and Jess talked about, we think these people are going to be our friends. We've had babies with them and experienced death. And many times we were married, and they went through all of those life experiences with us. And yet we leave and they're still back in their world doing what they've been doing. And it's a very lonely space. And, you know, many times we show up to our family functions and our closest friends, and they don't understand what we're doing. And they ask the dreaded question, which is, how's the business? Right? And inside you're like, oh my gosh, I'm dying. And you're like, it's good. It's really good. Right?
And we paste a smile on our face.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so when we, you know, 2.5 years ago, when we were thinking about what this business would look like, it was a very collaborative nature. And we wanted to build a community where women could come and be themselves with no judgment and no shame, no putting on the mask and pretending like they had it all figured out. We go to enough of those networking events where we know the women are really struggling financially. They're struggling with self-doubt and wondering, am I going to have to go back and get another job because I can't make it, because I'm not good enough, because I'm not smart enough to figure this out? And it was really important to us that we create a space where they could come and they could have access to us and get the coaching that they need to ask any question and just lay it on the table. I kind of describe it as putting the dirty laundry on the table and having this community of women who will stand there and fold the laundry with you. Because it's important for the rest of us to see you be successful. And that's what we want to create. And that's what we have created. And it's a membership community. So I think of it as like your health club membership, it's your mind club membership, but it really is, it's, we've broken it down into a monthly schedule where it's a mini mastermind. It's an opportunity to be coached. It's an opportunity to be able to practice selling. That's very scary to a lot of women, is to sell. I don't want to be sleazy or slimy or cheesy. And yet women are the most incredible salespeople I've ever met. When they are passionate about a product, program, stylist, they will tell everybody about it. And yet when it comes to selling themselves, they're very reluctant to do that. And they don't believe in themselves. So we work on that piece of it. And just women who are there to play two roles, to learn and to be better business owners and to look at their own trajectory, and then to train and teach others what they've learned and to share it.
So for all of you out there, you need to connect to these two smart girls and get in their program. Jess, what's the best way for folks to kind of get more information about that?
Yeah, if you go to twosmartgirls.com, that's the number 2, smartgirls.com, you'll actually see something toward the bottom called the collaborative. And it really is this, as Christy said, this really beautiful space where women are authentic. There you go, right there, where women are authentic. I mean, I just had a really great conversation today where, 2 women were bringing forth some pretty significant business challenges, questions that they have, right? So I said the answer to how is yes, but sometimes you do need someone to help you brainstorm and figure out the answer. What is the right path? And one of the parts of this community that I love so much is what we refer to as cafe conversations. It's like Christy said, the mindset piece, or the mastermind piece. And it really is an opportunity to get down and dirty and really talk through the how, and to get your questions answered, not just by us, but by the community, right? Teaching and learning from each other.
Awesome. Okay, folks, I'm going to type this out, twosmartgirls.com. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you connect with both Christy and Jess. You guys are both on LinkedIn, right?
We are, yes.
It speaks to my heart, ladies. It really does. And I think what you do is worthwhile. It's valuable. Not that you need to hear it from me, but it's such important work. And it's so worth talking about and so worth diving deeply into. And like you said, a rising tide lifts all boats. So we're in it together. I'm so glad Hannes introduced us.
No, I am
Hannes,
too.
if you're still out there. Thank you. Thank you.
But Annie, I think that speaks volumes. It really is about people telling other people about what you do, about what we do, about us being able to share that. So, I mentioned the community, but our vision really was much bigger than just this community. It was to be able to have a network of people so that when new business owners came in and said, I don't know if I'm an S Corp or an LLC or a corporation, it was that we could dig into the network and really help them figure that out quickly and easily so that they wouldn't spend time researching and diving into all the details and
accelerate it, basically.
And accelerate, right? I jokingly say to accelerate her, and that really is what it is, because I think that we can all win by helping each other.
There you go. Right there. We can all win by helping each other. Yes. So as we wrap up, Jess, what are you grateful for?
Well, one, I'm grateful for this conversation. I love being able to have this. But I would say, for me right now, I genuinely am so grateful for the community of women that have entrusted us with their journey, but who are equally pouring into us. Christy talked about the teaching and the learning. It goes both ways. And, a lot of times it feels like there's this invisible wall between the teacher and the learner. And we really wanted to shatter that. And I genuinely am so deeply grateful for the women in the community, what we're learning from each other every single day. I mean, it is truly a gift to be on a journey and supporting a woman as she is like literally reaching for the stars. And it's, I'm just genuinely so grateful for that.
What about you, Christy?
Well, I am very similar to Jess. I am grateful for this conversation, for you inviting us on, Fanny, for Hannes, for introducing us. You know, when you meet someone and they immediately are like, I need to get you connected with so-and-so, that speaks volumes that they understood the message, that they believe in the message, that they are passionate about it. So I really want to thank you on that one. I am grateful for my business partner. We say that all the time, but you know, it really is. It's like someone on the journey with you. If you decide to go into partnership, it's like being married to the other person. And we've been
Honest. I love these ladies. This is so needed. Yes, yes.
We're like married to each other, and a lot is at stake. And, you know, for almost 20 years, I chose not to have a partner. So it was very intentional and deliberate when I went that direction. And it was because I knew she had the heart and the passion the same as I did. And I really felt like our clients would benefit from the two of us. We were stronger together than we were separately. And so the women who follow us, the women who have entrusted us with their business, I am so grateful that they allow us to be part of that every single day.
Awesome. Okay, last little bit. We've gone way over time. I don't care. It's my show. But last thing, because I can't stop. Quick life lesson that you want to leave our audience with, Jess.
My thing is show up. Show up for yourself and show up for others in a way that allows you to be fully connected with your deepest purpose. And that requires a lot of hard work, but it is always, always worth it.
Christy?
Mine is to ask for what you want. At home, in business, in life, just ask for what you want and believe that you're worth it and you deserve it and you're halfway there to getting it.
Yeah. There you go, folks. Thank you. Thank you, Christy and Jess. Thank you to my audience. Thank you for joining me this Thursday. And every week, I'm thankful that you tune in and offer your comments, your inspiration, your support. And always remember to shine your light, share your voice, share your message, show up, and share it with the world through video. Thank you, everyone. Connect with Christy and Jess, and we'll see you next week.